Welcome to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Saturday show this evening. Hope you're having an amazing day and glad that you are tuning in to our channel this evening. If you haven't already, please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. And you can go to our brand new website that we launched last month at that'slifebyleahleach.com. All right, guys. As you all know, we have our sponsor of the evening. So our sponsor of the evening is All About My Daddy's Business. It's a nonprofit organization that provides single fathers spiritual, emotional, practical, financial, and administrative assistance to raise children. If you need their contact information, all of their contact information is below on our ticker. So please utilize them if you're looking for a resource for single fathers. So as you all know, we are dealing with COVID-19. This is the reason why we started our show virtual. So as you know, we are dealing with COVID-19, as I stated. Confirmed cases as of 7:45 this evening is 151 million confirmed cases. As of right now, deaths is a little over 3 million. I'm asking every single one of you, although there are mask mandates lifting, we want to please make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, following the guidelines of the CDC. If you are wanting to get the vaccine, I urge you to get the vaccination, as I have done both. I feel great. I'm glad that I have had the opportunity to be able to do so. So as you know, we're going to be talking about a heavy topic, but a necessary topic, especially now during COVID period. And we're going to talk about, we need to talk, the importance of wills and trust. And it's so important that we're talking about that now, especially now because of COVID-19. And I'm so thrilled to have my very special guest, Miss Janelle Williams. We're going to talk all about COVID-19. We're also going to talk about wills and trust and things that you need to do to get things in place, okay? So when we come back, we're going to hit straight off into the show and talk about the importance of wills and trust. We'll be right back. Welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning into our show today. A very important show, a very necessary show as we talk about wills and trust. As you know, I always bring the stats, so it's important that we bring statistics in this before we start into our show, okay? So according to credit.com, here are 7 documents you will need to fill out before you die. And these are documents that they think that are necessary to have in place before you take your transition. Last will and testament, trust, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, which is also considered a health directive, living will, HIPAA, which stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act release, and letter of intention. And we're going to talk about a few of these because it's important that we touch basis on a couple of these different documents that are needed when you need to get things in place for your legacy. According to caring.com, the number of young adults will have a will, and that will increase by about 63%, and it has since 2020. In 2021, 18 to 34-year-olds are, and for the first time, more likely to have a will than 35 to 54-year-olds. And I need y'all to hear those statistics because specifically they're talking about young adults. Young adults are now in the higher percentage of those that have wills. Despite COVID-19, the overall percentage of Americans with a will has not significantly changed at all. And as you can see, these are the statistics based on caring.com in terms of those that do not have a will, okay? So, as you know, we're talking about a heavy topic, but it's a necessary topic to have, especially now during our COVID period. And I am super, super excited about having Janelle on the show. She's an expert, and this is a Q&A session. So I'm imploring all of you, if you have questions, drop them in a comment box and we will answer them towards the end of the show. So Janelle, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited, Leah. So great to see you.
Thank you so much. And I am thrilled because I know that Janelle is an expert at this. And obviously, for someone like me, who I must admit, and I'm going to be transparent, I've always been transparent when it comes to this show. I don't have a will. I don't have a directive. I don't have a power of attorney. I don't have any of those things. And I think it's so critical, especially people of color, that we have documentation and things that are in place, especially now, because we don't know. Life is short. We've seen with COVID-19, young people are dying, older people are dying, and it's so critical that we have things in place. So, Janelle, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I am an estate planning attorney. I have been licensed since 2004, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Big up to the BK by way of Trinidad, which is in the West Indies. I went to Spelman College and then I went to Howard University College of Law. I am repping them today with
Yes,
my
ma'am.
Letterman sweater. And when I first came out of law school, I went to law school to be a public defender. Growing up in Brooklyn in the 80s, was a lot of foolishness happening with the police and just people like me getting arrested. And I would see the type of defense attorneys that they had, and I wanted to do better. And so I was happily a public defender, and my grandmother had a brain aneurysm. My grandmother has 9 children, of many, many grandchildren, and we all adored her, and it took us completely by surprise. And when she went to the hospital, they basically said to us, there's no life. And so what's the decision to be made? And the different children had different recollections of what had occurred. Some people said we should do everything we can to keep her alive. There were others who felt like we needed to remove her, and it caused some dissent, right? And some real problems. And that was the first time I heard someone say, do they have an advanced medical directive? I'd never heard that term before. And I was like, well, what does that do? They said that would have given her an opportunity to make the decision about what she would want to have happen if she found herself in this situation. And so I looked into that. I tried to find lawyers that looked like me that did that. I didn't find any. And I was like, wow, this is something, if we had known, would have really prevented a lot of trauma and sadness in our family. There's still hurt feelings. There's still questions about how things were handled, all because we didn't know that this document existed. And so as I went along with my criminal defense career, issues popped up, like people who had wills, who had left something to a child who was now going to be serving a life sentence, clients who had mental health issues, and parents were trying to figure out, how do I leave things to them in a way that they can be provided for, but protected from themselves, protected from making poor decisions because of developmental delays or because of just poor decision making in general. And so I started to explore estate planning more, meeting with different attorneys. And when I decided to leave and start my own firm, I decided to make that the focus of my firm. And so my goal is to educate and empower people, particularly people that look like me, about the ways that we can not just design our legacy, but protect it. We spend so much time teaching our children about the Bible and the Lord, teaching our children about budgeting and financing, teaching them about the steps of how you achieve success. And we don't think about how we protect all those things we work so hard to achieve. And we all know somebody in our family that if you just handed them $100,000 life insurance policy, it would not last very long. So there are all sorts of things that we can do, legal documents we can put in place to make sure that what we've worked so hard to obtain can be placed in the hands of the people that we love in a way that goes with our values and also allows them to flourish, gives them a step up. And that is what the majority has been doing for eons. And so when we talk about the struggles we have as a people in this country, and about how from the redlining and the Jim Crow and all those different things that made it difficult for us to build wealth, as that tide is turning, we want to give our children the leg up that they've been doing for centuries. Estate planning is an awesome way to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important. And you talked on something that is very important for me, which is legacy. It is so important that we think about the generation that's behind us. I have children, and, at any point, yes, I'm in good health for the most part, but at any point, I could be plucked from here, and I don't have anything in place to make sure that my children, the things that we've worked really hard, including Dad's Life, those things are in place for them so that nothing happens to it in the process. So this is why we're doing this show. It's so critical now, especially now that we have documentation put in place to make sure that our families are not suffering. Not another family is doing a GoFundMe page or is doing things to earn income, because far too often do we see people, even famous people, die and their legacy is just shattered to pieces because people are fighting over things that are trivial. So thank you for saying all of that. So, Janelle, I'm going to kick to my first question to you, which is, why do you believe that people do not have these documents in place? What is the hesitation on why people do not have things in place?
No one really wants to talk about dying. I mean, it's just not a fun thing to do, right? And I think that the reality is when you meet with me, we're going to talk about things like, what are your burial decisions? Do you want to donate your organs? Under what circumstances do you want to be kept alive? Is that just with pain medication, or do you actually want to be given nutrition? Do you want everything possible to be done to save your life? And so that's not a fun part of the conversation. But the other part of our conversation doesn't just talk about what happens if you pass, what happens if you're incapacitated, right? And so that's what we're seeing a lot of with COVID-19. People who are in the hospital for a great period of time, people who are suffering, even if they're not in the hospital and are not able to function. And the other people in their home don't know how to pay Georgia Power, don't know where the bills are supposed to go to, have no way to access the money in the account. Their money is there, but I don't know exactly how to get it from there to the right place. You show up at the bank. You're like, what do I do? And they're like, well, are there documents? What can we do? So we're talking about more than just if you pass away. We're talking about what if you can't make decisions for yourself. But who really wants to sit down and have those kind of discussions? You want to believe you're going to live for many, many decades and it's going to be okay. But I think the conversation is tough. So when you think about celebrities like Aretha Franklin or Chadwick Boseman, these were people who knew they were ill. It didn't really matter how much money they had. They knew that their time was likely to be short, and they still didn't feel compelled to talk about it. It's almost like if we talk about it, it's going to bring the bad thing to us. It is really troubling because when you talk about these numbers of 2 and 3 don't have a will, believe you me, in our communities, it's worse, right? We just really have almost a superstitious way of feeling like, well, if I sit down with her, inevitably something's going to occur. We have to stop thinking that way. It's important that we face our fears about when we're going to pass, because we all know we are going to pass at some point.
Definitely. And I used to tell my children, one of the tags that I always say is, you're born, you live, you do your purpose, you die. That is the cycle of life. That's just the way that it goes. So absolutely. My next question to you is, when do you believe a person should write their will? And I know many people have had argument about when it's appropriate to write a will. Some people wait until, like you said, know that they're sick and then they draft the things that they need to draft. But when is the most appropriate time, do you believe, to write a will?
I think the most appropriate time is now, right? We have seen in this season that life is not promised. And I have seen so many people in the probate side, after that family member has passed away with no documents, have to pay a much larger sum trying to figure out how we're going to get mommy's house. How are we going to get access to the things that she owns? And so the law says that anyone over the age of 14, so 14 and up, can have an advanced medical health care directive. I think that is crucial. I think once you're 14 and you're able to have opinions about the type of life you want to live, it's crucial that you start thinking about under what circumstances do you want to be kept alive. And there are a number of parents I've interacted with who have been so grateful for that option, to have a discussion with a teenager about potential brain injuries. If you're in a car accident, can we talk about the type of life you want to live if you have that type of injury? Certainly, if you own something or you have a dependent, you need a will. Because if you don't and you pass away and there's no one who's immediately available, a spouse or a partner, to take over custody of your children, people think they just go to grandma. They go to auntie, someone shows up and says, I'll take the children, and that's that. That's not how it works. They have to do home visits. They need to make sure this is an appropriate parent. And in some cases, who we know is an appropriate parent has a criminal history, previously had a drug problem. And so they may be excluded by a court as a potential guardian for your child. unless you put in paper, this is who is supposed to be responsible for my child. This is who's supposed to be responsible for the finances attached to my child. And so certainly, I think beyond question, if there is someone who is depending on you to take care of them, particularly if it's a minor, or if you own a piece of property that when you pass away has to go to someone else, it's my opinion you have to have some type of legal document that explains that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My next question to you, and this is one of the questions that I had in my mind, and this was actually going to be my Q&A question, but I'm going to ask it now. Do you believe that a person should have all seven of those documents? And we talked about a few different things. We talked about HIPAA, we talked about power of attorney, we talked about letter of intent. Do you believe that a person should have all seven of those documentations, or which one's the more critical ones, and why or why not?
Well, first of all, some of those documents are a bit duplicative. So there are places that people use the term living will often. We don't use it so much in Georgia. What we call it is an advanced medical health directive, right? So a living will basically means what document comes into play if you're still alive, but you can't speak for yourself. So those two are actually the same document. So now we're down to six. A lot of people choose not to have a trust, right? There's a lot of reasons that people have trust. We can get into that a bit more later, but I certainly think a HIPAA release is crucial because you can give someone access to the doctors to make decisions about your care, but you may not have access to the medical records. And I didn't go to med school, but I can look over what the doctor's notes say, etc. I don't have access to that right unless you've given me a medical release. And so you'll hear doctors say things like, I can't discuss that. That would be a HIPAA violation. In order for you to look at exactly what the scans look like, exactly what the notes say, you would need that document. So I think that that's crucial. I certainly think everyone should have a financial power of attorney and an advanced medical health directive. In this season where people are becoming ill, people are passing away, whether it's COVID related or not, we need to have something in place if we're not able to speak for ourselves, if we're not able to handle our own affairs, so that someone can step in and do that for us. The wills package that I do for clients, it includes 5 of those documents, which is the will, the HIPAA release, the advanced medical directive / living will, and the durable power of attorney. And then the letter of intent, essentially all that document is directives to your family members. So in that, it could be your final words you want to say to them, directions about specifically how you'd like things handled. I want to wear that particular suit with that particular hat. I want you to be kind to the cat. You could put whatever you want in that document. And so usually it's just like a top sheet that just says, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here. And these are the things that are most important to me that are not included in the actual legal document.
Definitely. I have one more question and we're going to take a quick break. So tell us the differences. And I think that is part of, I feel like some hesitation, I'll speak for me, that I've had in building wills and trusts, is that I don't know the differences between some of these documents. So tell me the difference between a will and a trust versus even a living will. What are the differences between those three?
Like we said, the living will is the advanced medical health directive. So that document is what says, under what circumstances do you want to be maintained, right? So if I have a horrendous car accident and we get to the hospital and I'm brain dead, your choices are very limited. At that point, if you're brain dead, your body can't function. At some point, the hospital is going to say, we need to remove life support. But there's a lot of brain damage that will let a doctor say to you, there will never be any quality of life. And they'll show you the different parts of the brain that are damaged. Her heart's not going to work properly. The part where language is, the part where thought is, the part where emotions are, all of those parts of the brain are dead because of this traumatic injury. What do you want us to do? In the advanced medical health directive, you can say, under that circumstance, if it is agreed to by 2 independent physicians, I don't want to be maintained, right? And so I just want pain medication so that my transition is not painful for me. I want pain medication and nutrition so that at least that part of my body is not going to pass. Or I don't want much at all, right? I just want you to kind of let me go. Or you can say, I am telling you, do everything possible to leave me alive, even if there's going to be a problem with my sustenance or my ability to care for myself. You take every measure possible. That document is what spells that out. Now, a will only comes into place if you passed away. So this is telling your family, this is what I have, this is where I want it to go, and this is how I want it to be placed in the different people's hands. That's what a will is. A trust is a living document. So you do that while you're alive, and you can place things in the trust. There are reasons you could do that. It can protect you in terms of from lawsuits. That thing that now used to be in your name is now in the trust. So it's protected from creditors and certain other types of people who may come after it. It is a very detailed, strong document in terms of instructions. So you can say you can only sell this home if you're married with 2 children. You can say this home is not to be sold for the next 100 years. You can say, I want the funds from this, half of it to go to the church and half of it to go to my son. There's very specific elements that you can have in there, and you can continue to change it while you're alive. It doesn't become an unchangeable document until you pass away. So a lot of clients who like anonymity, don't want their business in the street, they will choose a trust because with a will, it does become a public document. So whenever you pass away, you get a probate attorney. That attorney has to file the will with the county. And there are people who look at the documents, particularly if you're a well-known person, to see what it is you have and who you left it to. And we've seen that on the news where someone will say, this person passed away and they left them $1 million. For people who don't want people to know what they have or where it's going, they will choose a trust because a trust never goes through the court system. The person who's in charge gets access to it, and then they start handling business. So a lot of people who just, for whatever reason, feel like their business should be themselves, to themselves and not be in the public realm, they'll choose a trust, and that'll be one of the reasons they choose that. So that's the difference between those 3 documents.
I'm telling you, there's so much valuable information in today's show, you guys. You do not want to not miss a nugget of this. And it's great, wholesome information. We're going to take a quick break. When we come right back, we're going to continue on the topic of the importance of wills and trusts. We'll be right back.
Zeont Starfighters. It's a new action-adventure book series about broken teens being forced into an abnormal situation. There are unique powers and abilities to combat a deranged psychopath and his influence from causing senseless death. Available on Amazon is Story 1, The Beginning, and Story 2, The Struggle. Both are in ebook and paperback formats. It's the start of something that's going to be an epic tale and will become a household name. Please visit www.zeontstarfighters.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leach. Thank you so much for tuning into our segment about wills and trust with my very, very special guest, Janelle Williams. I'm so happy to have her expertise as a part of the show. So Janelle, I have a quick question. And I know for some people, it seems like we're talking in a general scope, but are wills and the laws of the wills, are they different from state to state? And do they need to be adjusted based on that?
So yes, they're absolutely different from state to state. So I am licensed in Georgia, and so I can only handle the wills and trusts and probate estates here in the state of Georgia. Each state has their own special deviations from general law, and some states it's harder to probate cases than others, and so you'll find that in those states more people are pushed to get a will or a trust because probate can be that much more expensive. So you will have to get an attorney that lives in the state that you live in. And so the law typically that's going to be in place is going to be the law of the state where you pass away, right? So if you are a New York resident, you have a will that was drafted in New York, you've moved to Georgia, it's a really good idea to have a Georgia wills attorney review it, right? Because if you're planning on staying here long term, you want to make sure that what's discussed in the will or the trust is going to work for the law in your state. Now, trusts are a little bit easier to manage state to state because the courts are not involved. So the law is not as big of an issue as the will is, but certainly we need to be conscious of all the little nuances in the various places in the United States.
Excellent. And I'm going to talk a little bit about wills and trust as we go on. And some of these questions will seem redundant because it's important that you all are getting all the information related to each topic. So just keep that in mind. So my next question to you, Janelle, is what are some benefits to having a will? And I know we talked a little bit about that and we kind of touched a little bit about the points of that, but what are some of the key benefits to having a will in place?
So the first thing we talked about is if you have a child, right? We don't want defects involved if we can help it. And so in a will, you can state who is going to be in charge of your children if something were to happen. This is specifically important for my LGBTQ community, because if you're not married, if the marriage wasn't recognized at a particular time, and your partner has been the person in your life this entire time, it is not a far gone conclusion that the court will just allow that other person to raise the children unless you have documented that. We also kind of have this presumption of, well, what's the likelihood my husband and I will die at the same time, or a wife and a wife will die at the same time? It happens more frequently than you'll think, right? So since I'm a probate attorney, I see that stuff more than probably the average person, but we've certainly heard about the car accidents, fires in a home, things where the whole family is in the place of injury and neither parent is either able to care for the family or they're no longer here. So we need to put things in place. So you can have in a will everything to my spouse, everything to my partner, but I'm going to push you to think about a second person, right? What if that person is not able to, or what if they're not willing to? What if they're at your bedside dealing with all the issues that come with that, or they're having to plan a funeral and face the fact that this person they love is no longer there? Is there someone else you trust who can step up in the gap and make sure that things are running the way that they're supposed to run? So I think we always have to think about the ways that we protect the people that we love. The other thing that the will does is it says who gets the house, who gets the car, who gets that piece of jewelry. We know when people pass away, is I want grandma's fake ruby ring because grandma always said that that was going to be mine. And now this thing that has very little monetary value causes huge friction. There's actually all sorts of materials from therapists that say that since grief is such a strong emotion, it's natural to shift to another strong emotion. And the closest one to grief is anger. It is really scientifically based problems that come about because we can't really sit with the fact that our loved one is no longer here. So I'm going to get angry about the most trivial thing proper. If anything I could think of to just get away from the sadness helps. So you can list out all the artwork goes to this child. All my shoes go to that child. My clients have all sorts of interesting things that they want to leave to the people that they love. And that is spelled out in the will, as well as what are your choices for burial or cremation, organ donation. All of those things can be discussed. To me, it's really a gift to your family. They're going to have to face life without you being there. The last thing they want to have to do is divvy up your stuff and try to figure out what would be the best thing, or fight with family members and friends about decisions. If you can write that out for them while you're well, while you're thinking in your right mind, it is a brilliant gift to give anybody that you love.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why we're doing this show in particular is because far too often families leave the burden to those that are behind to have to pick up the pieces and figure out how to fix it. And we want to take that out of that process for you. We're going to obviously give you tips and tools and things that you can do so that this process, although it does seem kind of overwhelming because nobody likes to talk about death, as we talked about, nobody likes to deal with their mortality, but it's important to have things in place so that you're not leaving burden to those that are behind. My next question to you, Janelle, is how often should I update my trusted will? How often should I do it?
So I contact my clients every 2 to 3 years to find out if there's been any major life changes. Did we pick up a new piece of property, let another piece of property go? Did that marriage not work out? Is that child who at one time was doing amazingly well now on drugs, now suffering from a newly diagnosed mental health issue? Then we need to tweak some things. In terms of the trust, when you build a trust, you maintain control over that trust the entire time. So my trust clients usually will call me. They'll say, I'm changing ownership of something. I need you to alter this in the trust. But in terms of the will, that's something we don't always think about. And you'll hear about people who they had a life insurance policy 20 years ago they've been paying on, and it's made out to the first husband. they've been married to the second husband now for 30 years, been no problems, and pass away, and the first husband is going to get it, right? There's no law that's going to say that he can't. You had to have changed that. And so what I do is have you pull all of your insurance policies, look at your retirement accounts, make sure that the beneficiary on there is the right one. So we check in every 2 or 3 years, but certainly anytime you have a major life change, or if a person that you've given something to or you want to be in charge has passed away, gotten dementia or Alzheimer's, we need to look at reevaluating our paperwork.
Definitely, definitely. So this was one of my big questions as well too, is if I have a trust, do I need a will, or are they interchangeable, and why not?
So the trust package comes with a will. It's called a pour over will, because there may be something we don't mention in the trust, right? A lot of us are not going to put our clothes in our trust, or we're not going to put the ownership of that in the trust. It just stays with us. So the will is really important to catch anything that may not have been placed in the trust, or things that just naturally wouldn't be placed in the trust, right? Where your linen's going, who's getting the dining room table, like those extra things are going to be discussed. And so yes, all of my trust clients, I don't know of anyone who just does a trust without a will, but all of my trust clients, they're going to get the will as well, along with the other incapacity documents, like we talked about, the Advanced Medical Health Directive, the Financial Power of Attorney, the HIPAA release, and the intention letter.
Okay, excellent. And now, since we're talking about power of attorney, we're going to shift that a little bit to that side. What is a power of attorney? What is the role of a power of attorney?
It allows them to be you contractually, right? So let's say you're in the middle of the home buying process, you're getting ready to go to the closing table, and you have a heart attack. You're in the hospital, you're not well, you're not able to sit up and participate in that type of discussion. A financial power of attorney will allow that agent, that's what we call them, or an attorney, in fact, just for that specific reason, will be able to go to the closing table and sign your name. So they don't just get to say Leah Leach. They'll say Leah Leach by my name, attorney, power of attorney. So that lets you step in and handle business while that person isn't doing well. You can have it be open-ended. So for example, mine is currently open, so my husband can do certain things for me if it needs to be. I have some clients who make it open, so it actually is in place now, but they just don't tell the person. So this way they don't go to the bank and try to clear out any money. But if something were to happen, there is some notation in their files that says you can step in. The other option is to make it springing. So you can say this power of attorney only becomes valid if I am incapacitated. If I've had a heart attack, a stroke, I'm hospitalized for an indefinite period of time, then this person can handle all of my financial affairs, contractual affairs, while I'm not feeling well.
Excellent, excellent. And again, we're going to go, since we're talking about health, talk about the importance of a healthcare directive. And I know we touched on it, but I think it's so critical, especially now with COVID-19. What is the importance, and what is a healthcare directive?
So I think a lot of people think about like DNRs, do not resuscitate, right? And they'll think, well, I'm not at that stage of my life. I'm 42. I want you to do everything that you can. But we have also seen really traumatic injuries. We've seen people on our Instagram feed, on the news, who were one way one day and then a tree fell on them, or a horrible motorcycle accident happened, something that put them in a place where they were not the person that they used to be. Now, clearly, if they're still able to live some kind of life, then the Advanced Medical Directive may not come into play. It comes into play when they can't talk, right? And so we're talking to doctors who are like, I don't know. I don't see any change. It's been a couple of weeks. We're not seeing any additional brain activity. It looks like if he or she comes out of this, they're not going to be that person. There is a time frame where you can remove support, right? And that person may live if you remove support. They may not, right? But you're honoring their decision. So for example, I choose not to live that way. If I have a traumatic brain injury or some major health condition that puts me in a place where I can't hug my babies, I can't kiss my man, I can't do the things that make me who I am, I can't really experience the joy that comes with being who I am, because I like me, my paperwork says that if it's in that type of place where I'm not going to have a decent quality of life, and I'm on that edge of I could live or I could pass, take me off and let's see what God's going to do, right? Because we believe miracles can happen. But what I don't want to have happen is the doctor pushed too far, and then I'm now sanctioned to live a life that's really burdensome to my family. There are clients of mine who feel totally different. What's important is that you write that down, not just because it's a great way to protect your legacy and that if you don't want your family racking up millions of dollars of bills to keep you in hospice or a nursing home, you can say that, but also because it is exceptionally traumatic to be the other person, trying to figure out what is the right decision. What if I make the wrong one? What if I can't take care of you? What if I resent you later? Am I making a choice based on ego, or is it really about you? When they find out that you've done this for them and you've told them what it is that you want, it is such a relief. They still have to deal with the consequences of either taking care of you or letting you go, but it is a relief to know you made that decision for them. So I think instead of thinking about it like just let's talk about mortality or let's talk about what happens if I'm not here, if I get super sick, let me just focus. Let me manifest health. Let me manifest I'm going to be alive till I'm 120. Let's just be realistic that life takes its course, right? That dash between the birth date and the death date has a lot of meaning. And if you want to contribute to that for another loved one, making the decision for yourself and documenting it legally is really one of the biggest gifts that you can give someone you care for.
And let me just say, I 100% agree with you. When my aunt transitioned due to cancer. One of the most beautiful things to me about her transition was she was very clear about what she wanted, very intentional about what she wants. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've
What happened? You look beautiful, but you're frozen. Let's hope that she will be right back.